Hello and welcome back to my channel What If Deku 2.0. Join us as we delve into the realms of fanfiction and fantasy, bringing you the best stories and discussions. Today, we're kicking off part 2 of our series, What If Deku Was Class 1A's Senior? If you enjoy this video, please give it a like and subscribe for more content in the future. The author of this story is Jace_is_dead from Archive of Our Own. All the relevant links are in the description. Feel free to say hello to the author on their profile. Now, let's dive into the fanfic. Since Izuku was the only student in his class, it made things a little easy, but also complicated, especially when it came to group activities. Get suited up and head outside. Aizawa commanded as soon as Izuku walked in. He tossed the teen a suitcase before walking out. Izuku looked at it weirdly before realizing it must have been his hero costume. He walked to the changing rooms and opened up the case. Inside was tight black athletic tank top, a black leather jacket with a white hood, fingerless white gloves, a white metal mask, black cargo pants, white combat boots with black metal soles, a black belt with white pockets on it, 2 guns, white thigh holsters, his escrima rods, and a pile of cloth. He picked it up and examined it before realizing it was 2 of Aizawa's capture weapons. He geeked out for a moment before trying to realize where they were supposed to go. He saw a note in the case and read it. Dear Midoriya, the capture weapons given to you are meant to be wrapped around your arms. Good luck. Tilda Nedzu and Power Loader. He was shocked to see Nedzu on it, but chose to ignore it. Getting dressed, he looked in the side mirror and smiled. He also noticed that the computer on his arm was pretty well hidden, and you couldn't see the screen unless you were looking directly at it. He might have to add more stuff later. He walked to the front and saw 13, Aizawa, and Midnight standing at the bus. All 3 looked to him as he ran up to them. Not bad, kid. Izuku smiled, though you could only really tell by his eyes since he had the mask on. 13 and Aizawa got on the bus with Izuku and Midnight following. So Midoriya, are you excited? Midnight asked, since there wasn't really anyone for Izuku to talk to. Yeah, I'm not really sure what we're doing, but it probably has something to do with rescue since 13 is here and we're driving somewhere. Plus I haven't used or even seen my hero costume till now. Then again, it wouldn't explain why you are here. You're not a rescue hero. Not that I don't think you're an amazing hero. You really are. But you tend to deal with more strict situations because of your quirk. But you could be used as a villain, maybe. It would be. He slowly got quieter as he began to mumble. This shocked Midnight a little. He's fine, just does that sometimes. Aizawa reassured, making her laugh a little. I don't think I've ever seen him talk this much. Usually pretty quiet in my class. Izuku seemed to snap out of it and slammed a hand over his mouth. Sorry, didn't mean to start doing that. He was blushing lightly, but he was nervous. Last time he had mumbled in school, it didn't go well. No worries, problem child, Izuku nodded. Did you do the homework I assigned you? Izuku moved his hand and nodded. You wanted me to analyze that wind hero, right? Izuku asked, trying to remember everything he wrote down while Aizawa nodded. I'll have to catalog all my analysis into the computer. That way I can have it on hand if I need it, he mumbled, absent-mindedly touching where the computer was, but the hero. It wasn't long till they made it to a large dome building. Getting off the bus, 13 started to explain everything to Izuku. This is the unexpected simulation joint, they announced as they all walked in. Izuku was practically bouncing on his feet in excitement. Here you'll be tested and work on your rescuing as a hero. Okay, now he was bouncing. A few ground stuff first. While we're doing this, don't be afraid to ask for help if you're lost or in danger. Izuku nodded his head along. Be careful and think of yourself first. And finally, have fun and learn. Izuku clapped at the end while 13 bowed. 13-sensei? They looked to him. Can I ask you more about your quirk? Of course. What do you want to know? While those 2 were talking, Aizawa and Midnight walked around the place a little. How well do you think your kid's gonna do? Midnight asked, looking around some of the areas. He'll do fine, he knows what to do and what not to, Aizawa stated simply, though Midnight had a smirk on her face. You admit he's your kid then? Aizawa glared at her, making her laugh even more. It was finally time for their exercises to start, and Izuku was still bouncing in excitement. For the first one, we'll do a few simple things, like first aid. We'll teach you signs for certain things and go from there, 13 explained. Izuku nodded his head. This would be easy for him. He did a lot of research on injuries and things to do to fix them. He even knew how to help if you got shot in the eye with a rubber bullet. Okay, Aizawa on the ground, Aizawa groaned as he laid down. Now be in pain, 13 commanded. Aizawa rolled his eyes. Oh, it hurts, ouch. Izuku was trying not to laugh since Aizawa wasn't very convincing, but 13 went with it. Okay, now do what you think is right, and we'll help you along the way. Izuku nodded and walked over to Aizawa before crouching down. Hi, can you tell me what happened? Izuku asked, pulling down his mask. He heard it can calm down people in an accident if they know what you look like. I was told to lay on the ground. Izuku almost burst out laughing at that, making Aizawa smile slightly before 13 glared at him. I mean, I was in a car crash. Izuku collected himself and became serious again. Okay, can you tell me where you feel the most pain? Aizawa had to think about it for a second. My chest, leg, and head. Izuku reached into one of his pockets and pulled out a small flashlight and waved it in Aizawa's eyes. He stopped for a minute before turning to 13 and Midnight. For the head injury, Aizawa-sensei's pupils and everything will react normally, but I don't know if he actually does have something wrong since nothing will be out of the norm. That seemed to shock all three teachers. And how do you know that? 13 asked, a little intrigued. Oh, well, I have a lot of free time, so I tend to do a lot of research on stuff that I think can help me be a hero. Plus my mom's a nurse. The three teachers were a little shocked, because most kids use their free time to hang out with friends. Okay, well, if everything is reacting normally, then what do you think the pain would be? Izuku thought about it for a moment. Possibly a small concussion or headache, though I would still prefer to get the person to a hospital as soon as possible just in case. 13 nodded, and he continued looking over Aizawa for other injuries. You said your chest, right? Is it hard to breathe? Izuku asked with a hand on the man's chest to measure his breathing. It did seem a little labored, actually. Yes, there's pressure on my lungs. Izuku glared a little and leaned down, actually listening to his breathing. He leaned back up and looked to his teacher. Aizawa-sensei, are you actually injured? Because your breathing is a little slow and rough sounding, and you flinch a little when breathing. Aizawa seemed shocked that he had noticed. I may have been kicked in the chest and sent into a wall. All three of them glared at Aizawa, though Midnight looked closer to laughing. Sensei, you can't do that. He checked the others' breathing again and put a little pressure in places. Seeing Aizawa wince a couple times, you have a few bruised ribs, but nothing's broken. You need to take care of yourself more, Izuku scolded. Now he thought the teacher might have a small concussion. I'm a pro. I can't, Izuku cut him off. Nope, no excuses. You might have a concussion too. Izuku checked his eyes again, and it did seem like it. Izuku glared at his teacher. You do. Did you get hurt anywhere else? Normally 13 and Midnight would be helping, but Midnight was having too much fun recording it and 13 watching. My shoulder and left leg. Izuku nodded, checking those parts. Okay, looks like you have a few pulled and strained muscles, but nothing too serious. Aizawa nodded. But why didn't you go see Recovery Girl? You could be seriously hurt. I'm an amateur, you know. Aizawa was about to speak before Izuku stopped him. You know you aren't a very good role model. What would you do if I got badly hurt but didn't go see Recovery Girl? Izuku put his hands on his hips. I would scold you. Exactly. The UST trip had been cut short since it just turned into Izuku lecturing Aizawa about health and safety, though he did learn a little more about first aid. He was at the cafe again, though since he had a break from the gym. Mayumi was out getting more items they needed, but the place wasn't that busy. A few people scattered around on their phones or working on school work. He was giving people refills when one of the students there stopped him. "Sorry if this is a little strange, but we were wondering if you knew how to do this," a girl with a black ponytail asked. She was sitting at a table with a girl who had short purple hair and earphone jacks hanging from her ears. Izuku looked down at what they were doing. "Oh, it's okay." He looked at the girl's work first. "Okay, you just messed up a little here. You need to make that a plus and switch those numbers is all." Both looked and realized the mistake. "Oh crap, I have to go back and redo my work." The girl with purple hair groaned. Izuku felt a little bad. "Well, if you want you can come sit at the counter. I can try and help more." Both girls seemed shocked but excited. "Are you sure? We don't want to bother you while you're working," the girl with the ponytail asked. "Don't worry, this place doesn't get that busy, plus Mayumi should be back soon." The girls nodded and moved their stuff to the counter while Izuku cleaned a few tables. When he went back to the counter, they introduced themselves. "I'm Yaoyorozu Momo, by the way." "Jiro Kyoka." Izuku smiled and shook his hand with Momo, who offered it. "Midoriya Izuku at your service." Izuku was more than happy to help the two girls out with their work. He told them to come again if they ever need help with anything since he didn't mind the extra company. He had another late shift that night and had seen his teacher again. "Aizawa-sensei, you should really take a break so your injuries can heal properly if you aren't going to go see Recovery Girl." Izuku scolded, handing the man a coffee and muffin. "I already saw Recovery Girl to heal. I'll try to be more careful." Izuku smiled and nodded his head. "Good." Once the teacher left, Izuku began closing up. Not many things were left to clean since Izuku did that a lot when it wasn't busy. Once everything was cleaned, he closed up and started the walk back to his house. He stopped at an alley though when he saw something. Pausing, he looked down trying to spot something. There was a crash and an animal running out that made him jump a little, but it felt like something was still there. He walked down it, having his hands clenched in case he had to fight. He was near the end when he heard a groan. He turned quickly and saw someone slumped against the wall. "Oh my God." Izuku quickly ran over and crouched in front of the person while he shouldered his bag off. He looked at the person closely, moving their head with his hands a little to check for a pulse. It was there and even. The breathing seemed a little labored, but nothing too bad. He saw they had a few scratches and bruises along with a large cut near their hairline. Looking a little closer, he also saw they had a bad shoulder injury. Crap, they need the hospital. He moved his hand away from their face, but a hand stopped him. He jumped a little, seeing that they grabbed his arm and yanked a little. "No hospital." He scrunched his eyebrows and crouched. "You're injured. You need help." The hand on his wrist tightened and even seemed to burn a little. The person's eyes opened more. "No. Hospital." He stared at them before sighing. He crouched down and looked them over a little more. It wasn't life-threatening or anything luxury. "Fine." They let go of him. While they seemed half lucid, it was obvious they wouldn't be able to walk. "I'm going to regret this." He grabbed onto their arm before turning and pulling them onto his back. They were a little heavy, but not too much so it wasn't as difficult. "What are you doing?" they asked through slurred words. Izuku rolled his eyes. They seemed just as stubborn as Aizawa. "I'm taking you to my place so you can get help." He felt the others start to shift. "Or I can leave you to bleed out." The shifting stopped. "Okay, wanna tell me your name?" "Dabi." Izuku knew it was a fake name, which meant the guy didn't trust him. "Midoriya Izuku at your service, and we're here." He opened the door and carefully lowered Dabi onto the couch, making sure not to aggravate any wounds. Izuku looked around the house for a second. "Okay, my mom and brother are asleep right now, but mom should be getting up in a couple hours." Dabi started to get up but grunted, "Oh no you don't. Where do you think you're going? Said your mom might be getting up soon. Izuku just glared as he made the other sit back down. So, you're injured. Besides, she's a nurse. She probably won't notice. There was creaking getting both of their attention to see Shinsu walking out of the hall. Izuku, what are you? He looked to Dabi, who seemed ready to run before sighing, I'll get the medical stuff. Thanks, Toshi, he called back as the other went back down the hall. Dabi looked between the hall and Izuku. He seemed pretty relaxed for having a stranger bleeding out on his couch. Izuku laughed a little while sitting down. It's kinda how he got here. Izuku didn't explain further as Shinsu came back with the supplies. He sat next to Dabi and just scrolled on his phone while Izuku wrapped and treated the wounds until he got to the shoulder. This is gonna hurt. Izuku put one hand against the shoulder near the wound and used the other to grab the disinfectant while putting the cloth between his teeth. Sorry, Izuku whispered before pouring it on Dabi's shoulder. The other gritted his teeth and grabbed Izuku's wrist again. Sorry. He stopped and took the cloth, putting pressure on the wound. Grabbing the thread, he quickly sewed it up. Though it was a little messy, it was as good as it was gonna get. Okay, should be good now. Dabi finally let go of Izuku's wrist. He knew it was gonna bruise and could tell it was first, close to second-degree burns. He wrapped the injury just in case before looking at his own. I'll be right back. Toshi, make sure he doesn't move. Shinsu hummed as Izuku walked away. So what's your deal? Shinsu asked, looking at Dabi. Dabi quirked an eyebrow. The hell you mean? What's your deal? Shinsu smirked. Well, Izuku has a tendency to pick up strays, but none this messed up. Dabi rolled his eyes. Oh yeah, well what about you then? Shinsu shrugged his shoulders. Abusive foster homes. He kidnapped me one night, and now I live with him. Dabi was a little shocked at the answer. He sighed, leaning back. Found me bleeding out in an alley after a fight. Shinsu just nodded. Sounds fun. Izuku came back with gauze wrapped around his wrist. Either of you hungry or thirsty? Izuku asked while walking into the kitchen. I'll take a water and sandwich. Shinsu looked to Dabi expecting an answer. Same thing. Izuku looked at him for a minute. Okay. Soon it was almost 4 in the morning, and the three of them were all eating and drinking. But Dabi was just shocked and confused at how relaxed they seemed around him, even though they didn't know who he was. So, do you just kidnap people for fun? Izuku and Shinsu almost spit out what was in their mouths, though Izuku's was out of shock while Shinsu was trying not to laugh. What? He said you kidnapped him, and you kidnapped me. Izuku turned to Shinsu, who was still trying not to laugh. You told him that I kidnapped you. Shinsu nodded while trying to breathe now. First of all, I didn't. You called me. Second of all, you can leave. Dabi almost stood up. As soon as you're healed up. I could be a criminal, you know. Some villain with a body count. Izuku looked at him with a smirk. Are you? Dabi shook his head. Then I don't need to worry. Dabi didn't get why this guy was so trusting, and it was kinda worrying him now. Shinsu sat up and turned the TV on before settling on a documentary channel. But I'm a guy covered in scars, bleeding out in an alley. Shinsu groaned and rolled his head back. How long are you gonna ask the same question? Dabi just shrugged his shoulders. He doesn't know, until something makes sense. Are you dangerous? Izuku asked. I could kill you. So could a hero, so could water, so could a very determined goose. You're not special. Shinsu joked at the end, making Izuku laugh a little. Fine, I'll shut up. It wasn't long before they heard an alarm go off and someone upstairs start to move around. Mom's awake, Shinsu kindly pointed out. Crap, what time is it? Izuku stood up and saw it was a little after 6. I gotta get ready. You too, Toshi, and take a nap or something after school. Dabi watched the two get up. And what about you, mister? I need a full schedule. Izuku playfully shoved him. I don't have work today, so I'll be at the gym. Dabi wasn't sure what to do. The two had left, and he felt like if he left the house, then Izuku would somehow track him down. There were footsteps and Inko walked out before stopping and staring at Dabi. Well, hello. Izuku and Hitoshi didn't tell me we had a quest. He wasn't really sure how to respond. I'm Inko, by the way, their mother. Nice to meet you. Dabi. Nice to meet you, Dabi, but I have to go soon. Have a good day, boys, she called, grabbing her keys and a jacket. Bye, Mom. Love you, Mom, the two called back. Soon the two came back down. It was almost 7. Izuku was wearing jeans, a black shirt, his sports jacket, and had his hair tied up while Shinsu was in his uniform. The two sat back down for a minute. So Dabi, I usually walk Toshi and the others to school before coming back here and changing. You want to come with or stay here? Dabi didn't feel comfortable staying in a stranger's house exactly. I guess I'll come. Who are the others though? Izuku didn't get to answer as banging was heard from the door. Oi, Deku, eyebags, let's go. Dabi just stared at the door. That's Kaken. Well, Bakugo, don't worry, he's nice. The three stood up, though Dabi was a little slower since he was a little sore still. Who is that? Katsuki asked as soon as they opened the door. This is Dabi. Katsuki just looked him up and down. Whatever, we gotta get hair and the extras. Shinsu and Katsuki mostly talked to each other while Izuku and Dabi walked behind them. Dabi was sort of trying to figure out why they were all just okay with him being there. This absolute stranger that didn't give a real name, hadn't done anything for them, covered in ugly scars, and bleed on their couch. You're wondering why we're all okay with this, right? Izuku asked, eyes not leaving the two in front of them as they kept talking. Yeah? To be honest, I don't really know. You looked like you needed help and I could give it to you. Doesn't matter what you look like, who you are, or what your quirk is, or if you even have one. Dabi paused for a second and looked at Izuku. You're quirkless. Izuku nodded as they kept walking with Dabi needing to catch up for a second. It was silent for a second, but Izuku could tell Dabi didn't mind. Bakugo, Senpai, Shinsu, a group of 4 jumped out and tackled Katsuki while they waved to the others. Kirishima stood up while the other 3 kept bothering Katsuki and Shinsu. Whoa, Dabi flinched back a little, expecting them to say something about the scars. You look so cool. I'm Kirishima Ijiro. Nice to meet you. Dabi was shocked once again by the group. I'm Kaminari Denki. Who are you, gorgeous? Dabi just stared at him while Shinsu smacked him upside the head. Stop being stupid. Sorry about him. He's like that with everyone. Izuku waved his hand dismissively. I'm Siro. Mina, he nodded at the two. Dabi. The 4 looked at him with stars in their eyes. That's so cool. I wish I had a cool name. Bro, that's manly. They had walked the group to school and were walking back to the house in comfortable silence until someone broke it. Is that Midoriya? Izuku flinched at the voice and Dabi took notice quickly and stepped closer to Izuku on instinct. Izuku tried to walk a little faster, but was stopped when a hand grabbed him. Midoriya, it is you. Izuku was forced to turn around and Dabi followed. Though he looked more angry than anything, how have you been? Izuku knew they weren't really asking. Dabi could almost see the anxiety rolling off of Izuku. Whatever, you know I'm not really asking. After all, no one cares about a freak like you. Dabi stepped between them and glared. How about backing off? He growled. Izuku was shocked at the action. Who the hell are you? Dabi stepped closer and Izuku could see slight flames on his face. Your worst nightmare. The other teen looked scared. Now go. The teen quickly turned and ran. Izuku stood there in shock as Dabi turned back around. What? That was so cool. Oh my gosh, you just stared at him and he ran. Is this what the others feel like? He mumbled out the end, making Dabi confused. Okay. Well, don't you have school? Izuku looked at the time. He still had a good 30 minutes. Oh crap, yeah, we gotta head back. Izuku was walking to the school with Dabi on a phone he had remade from scratch. You remade this phone? Izuku chuckled a little. Yep, it was difficult, but I set it up so it contacts only people with a specific app sort of thing. He heard a hum over the phone. It was a little difficult, but it works. Oh, and if you need anything just text. It should show up on the screen for my costume. Right, and I'm stuck here till. Oh, if you want you can meet me near Yua once school gets out around 3. I have to get the others too. Then we go to a gym Kirishima's mom's work at. Normally I also have work, but I got today off. Kid was right, you do have a busy schedule. Dabi chuckled over the other end. Haha, but really you're free to come to the school and text me. Heard you the first time, Midoriya. I'll make sure to keep you updated. Okay, I gotta go. See ya later, Dabi. Izuku hung up and walked into the classroom, seeing Aizawa looking at papers. Good morning, Aizawa-sensei. He waved with his left hand, forgetting it had the wrapping on it. Morning, Mai. Aizawa stopped looking at Izuku's hand. What happened to your hand? Izuku jumped a little and hit it. Oh, I burned it while cooking last night after I got home. Toshi was still awake and was hungry. He explained a little quickly. Aizawa looked from him to the bandaged hand. As long as it doesn't affect you during training. Izuku nodded as he sat down and pulled out his notebooks. Dabi, how do ovens work? Midoriya, what are you doing? Dabi, never mind, figured it out. Midoriya, what? Dabi, are any of you allergic to anything? Midoriya, no? Aizawa was now curious as to why at random points Izuku would pull out his phone and answer a text. He wasn't angry since it wasn't interrupting anything, but with that and the bandages he was curious about it, and worried, but he would never admit that. He was in the teacher's lounge just staring at his hands. Ah Sho, what are you doing? Present Mike asked, looking worriedly at his husband. Aizawa sighed. This morning Midoriya came in with his hand bandaged and kept checking his phone. Midnight started laughing. Of course you noticed something like that. Midnight doubled over laughing. Aizawa-sensei, lunch rush said. Izuku stopped and looked at his phone. What? Anyway, lunch rush said you haven't gotten food yet. Izuku handed him his tray like normal. Thank you, Midoriya. No problem, sensei. He walked out and left. Now that Aizawa thought about it, he didn't know where the younger went to lunch either. Oh wow, you're right. Didn't think he actually did that. Present Mike said. Exactly. Once school let out, Izuku was surprised to see Dabi at the gate. You actually came, Dabi smiled a little. Yeah, well, it's a little weird sitting in your house. What were the questions about from earlier? Dabi just shrugged. I have no idea what you're talking about. What? Dabi, don't be like that. Who's that with Midoriya? Midnight asked, looking out the window. That immediately got Aizawa's attention. He walked over to the window to see Izuku talking with someone likely around 18 or 19 with black hair and a few scars showing. I don't recognize him, Aizawa pointed out, though that made Midnight laugh while Present Mike just gasped. You don't know your own kid's friends? What kind of father are you? Aizawa rolled his eyes. For the last time, I'm not his dad. Midnight gasps this time. What if it's his boyfriend? Present Mike joined in this time. Really? You think Midoriya has a bad boy type? Can we please not talk about the types my student is into? Aizawa hit both of them. Come, Uwan, tell me, Izuku begged Dabi, making him smirk. Nope, you'll find out later. Izuku groaned as they finally arrived at the kids' school and waited for them. You're still here. Mina jumped out and attached herself onto Dabi's arm, making him jump at first, but calm down once he realized who it was. Oh my god, you're so warm. She let go, starting to mess with the others again. Seems like they warmed up to you. Izuku teased and nudged him a little. Yeah, I guess. They made it to the gym and most of them were working out. Well, everyone except Shiro, Kaminari, Shinsu, and Dabi. Izuku was using a punching bag with Haku holding it, Katsuki and Kirishima sparring, and Mina doing some stretches. Dabi was just watching them before he noticed something and stood up. "Your stance is off," he pointed out to Katsuki. "Huh?" He walked over and kicked the other's foot a little before making him square his shoulders. "There, now try it." Katsuki rolled his eyes but threw another punch at Kirishima. It seemed a little more powerful than before. "Oh hell yeah." Dabi walked back over and leaned against the wall. "I don't believe we've met yet," he jumped, not noticing someone there. "My name's Sakura Kirishima." "Dabi?" Sakura nodded. "I assume you know Midoriya then. Do you have any previous training?" That mistake was hard for any of us to notice. Dabi wasn't sure how to answer that since he did. Yeah, a little." Sakura nodded. "How would you like a job?" Dabi almost fell in his shock and turned to her. "Well, you're obviously well trained if you noticed that, and we could always use a little more help around here. Plus, if you're friends with Midoriya, then you're also accepting." Dabi was still in shock. "I am okay," Sakura smiled. "Fantastic. You start tomorrow." She walked away to her wife, who had finished helping Izuku. "What just happened?" Izuku was dying of laughter while Dabi rolled his eyes. Yeah, laugh it up. It's so funny." He calmed down and took a few breaths. "Seriously? She just offered it to you?" Dabi nodded his head. "Yeah, really weird. But why did we leave the kid?" he asked, remembering Shinsu wasn't with them. Oh, he's gonna study at Kaken's house with the others. He'll be back later," Izuku explained, waving his hand dismissively. "Okay." Izuku opened the door to the house. "I also made dinner." His eyes widened as they made it to the kitchen. "Holy crap!" There was a large arrangement of food. "Dabi, you made this?" Dabi rubbed his neck a little awkwardly. Yeah, my mom taught me a little when I was younger, and you helped me so, you know." Izuku laughed a little before hugging the other, who was shocked and just stood there. "Thanks, you really didn't have to." "Yeah, well, whatever." The two sat down and started eating. A few hours later, Shinsu joined them and reacted similarly to Izuku. "Okay, so we have a guest room that you can use, that way you aren't sleeping on the couch." Izuku guided him to the room. It was a pretty plan room minus what looked like a few hand-sewn blankets. "Thanks, you really didn't have to do this, you know." Izuku waved his hand a little. "Nonsense, you needed help so I helped you. Now get some sleep, you're probably tired." Izuku walked out of the room, leaving Dabi to sit silently on the bed. He looked around a little while, feeling the soft blanket in his hand before falling back onto the bed and staring at the ceiling. "Where are you going?" Taoya turned to his sister. "I can't deal with this anymore, Fayumi. He's put all of us through hell. For what? Some stupid dream?" He squeezed his eyes shut and sighed, turning onto his side. "Maybe they'll believe me." Izuku woke up the next morning and started getting ready right away. He was supposed to work with Aizawa more on how to use his capture weapons correctly without getting tangled. He walked out into the hall, making sure to wake up Shinsu. He looked in Dabi's room and saw the other asleep on top of the sheets, looking almost in pain. He scrunched his eyebrows and walked closer. He sat on the edge of the bed and heard Dabi mumbling something in his sleep. He didn't want to wake the other since he looked like he needed sleep, but it also looked painful. He knew when him or Shinsu had nightmares that it was better to wake up than stay in it. He also knew that Dabi might accidentally burn him again. "Dabi," he placed a hand on the other's shoulder, "wake up. It's just a dream." Almost like lightning, he shot up and grabbed Izuku's wrist with his quirk activated. It was the same wrist as before, so luckily it burned the bandages before him. "Dabi." The other let go and seemed to snap out of it. "Oh, I'm so sorry." Izuku smiled a little. "It's okay. Just a small burn." Dabi didn't seem to believe him since Izuku was now hiding his hand. "I'm gonna get ready for school. You can go back to sleep." Izuku quickly left and went to the bathroom, pulling out his first aid kit from middle school and started patching it up. Once he was done, he walked back to his room and changed into his usual morning clothes before going to the living room and seeing Shinsu and Dabi already sitting on the couch. Rock and roll buckaroos, let's go, Shinsu groaned. You're grounded from HeroTube, Izuku gasped playfully. You can't ground me. I'm your older brother. Izuku saw Dabi at least smile, so that was a plus. Izuku made it to class on time with Aizawa laying in his sleeping bag on the floor. He figured the other was asleep and made his steps silent while he unpacked and mumbled quietly. I wonder if I should look into a vehicle. It would have to fit a few people if I wanted to bring the kids, but a van wouldn't be very nice. He pulled out a notebook and started writing down ideas, maybe something like a jeep, or I could go for something small like a skateboard. Maybe I could add stuff to it and make it faster or something. He started sketching out the idea. A long board with a few added mods, maybe something that can make it like a scooter or a bike. He tried to think of how he could do that. If I use a bendable metal, it could work. Maybe I could make it attach to my shoes, like skates. What are you doing, problem child? Aizawa asked, now standing up. Izuku jumped and laughed a little awkwardly. Well, I was thinking about something for transport, so for normal stuff maybe like a jeep, but then I started thinking smaller like a skateboard, but if I mowed it I could make it like an attachment, maybe even make them skates too. Aizawa looked at the blueprint. Fine, show it to Power Loader later. Aizawa's eyes drifted to his bandaged hand. Seeing more there than before, did you burn yourself again? Izuku looked down to his hand. Oh, yeah, I need to be more careful, Aizawa just hummed. Right, well come on. We got work to do. Izuku's burn irritated him a little. 1, because anytime Dabi saw it, he would frown and be upset. 2, Aizawa seemed to be hyper-focused on it and not believe Izuku when he said it was from cooking. And 3, because his capture weapons rubbed on it weirdly. It didn't hurt any, but it wasn't fun either. He grabbed his lunch, and the one lunch rush made for Aizawa like always and headed to the teacher's lounge. He pushed the door open with his foot and sighed. Aizawa-sensei, you... He paused, not seeing his teacher, present Mike-sensei. Where's Aizawa-sensei? The other looked up. He didn't tell you? Izuku shook his head and set the food down. He said he had a meeting with Nedzu. Should be back later though. Izuku frowned a little. Oh okay, Power Loader Sensei. Can you look at a quick sketch? Sure thing, Midoriya. Hand it over. I don't know Nedzu. Something's up with him. Nedzu nodded his head. I definitely think something is going on, but I don't believe he's in danger. He would come to us if something was truly wrong, more specifically you. Aizawa rolled his eyes. Why does everyone keep pointing that out? I barely know anything about the kid. Then learn something about him. What? Nedzu pulled out a few papers and organized them. Why don't you learn more? I'm sure if you asked he would tell you, or you could look at his file from his other schools. Aizawa stared at him for a minute before offering his hand. Nedzu placed the papers there with a smile. Fine. Midoriya, Aizawa called as Izuku walked into the classroom. What was your middle school like? Izuku was caught off guard, and a flash of fear flickered in his eyes. It was okay, why do you ask? His arms went closer to his chest almost defensively. I was looking over your old files and some of the information doesn't line up. Izuku nodded slowly and was already looking at the ground. It says here you were a distraction in class, tried to start fights, bothered other kids, and didn't listen to teachers. Izuku felt like crying now. Do you mind telling me what really happened? I don't know. I'm sorry. I'll try to be better. Aizawa's eyes widened. No, Midoriya, just tell me what happened. Izuku mumbled something, but Aizawa couldn't hear. What? Why do you even care? Just look in that stupid file. Aizawa was shocked at the outburst, though Izuku seemed just as surprised as he gasped, I'm sorry, I need to leave. Aizawa stopped him. Midoriya calmed down. Izuku stopped moving for a moment. Tell me what's wrong. I'm not angry. Okay. Izuku looked up a little and Aizawa could already see the tears. Are you sure? Aizawa let a breath out and smiled a little. Promise, now tell me what happened. The two sat down at Izuku's desk. It started when I was told I was quirkless. You, stay away from me. Izuku let tears run down his face as the other students ran away from him. Quirkless freak. Loser. No wonder he has no friends. He's always mumbling. It's creepy. And it got so much worse. He let out a wet laugh. I even protected other kids from bullies, but they bullied me too. No one really cared. No teachers stopped it or anything. Then when I got into middle school, Izuku walked into class with his head down, avoiding everyone's eyes. He knew if he looked at them they might beat him up or something, and it was getting harder to hide it. He walked to his desk and paused. He saw new writing on his desk. He gave up trying to clean it a while ago. It was full of the usual free closer and kill yourself. He sighed though when he saw the flowers on his desk, spider lilies. He heard his classmates snicker and start to whisper behind their hands as he moved the flowers to his bag where he kept them in a book. It turns out it was easier to keep them than throw them out. If I didn't keep them, it meant everything would be worse. He set his head down on one of his arms while the other laid there on the desk. During class, they would throw things, insult me, or use their quirk on me, and the teachers did nothing. Aizawa listened as Izuku continued talking about what happened to him, and Aizawa doesn't think he's ever felt so mad in his entire life. He wanted to kill whoever told Izuku those things and destroy the school itself. What kind of hero can't even stand up to their bullies? Aizawa snapped out of the murder thoughts and looked at Izuku confused. I've protected Toshi, Kirishima, and the others multiple times from people, but I couldn't even help myself. He still didn't meet Aizawa's eyes as he cried harder. Kid, it's okay. Aizawa put his hand in Izuku's hair to try and calm him down. I was bullied when I was younger too. Izuku's head perked up and he looked shocked. What? Yeah, people thought I was evil or had a villain's quirk, so I didn't have any friends really. Izuku just stared at him shocked. So it's okay. I didn't stand up for myself either. Aizawa wasn't expecting anything, so when Izuku suddenly tackled him into a hug, he was confused before he hugged the other back. Aizawa burst into the teacher's lounge and glared at all of them. If anything were to happen to Midoriya, I would kill everyone in this room and then myself. He then walked out and slammed the door, leaving all the teachers confused while Present Mike and Midnight died laughing. Okay, if I do this then, Izuku tapped the top of his right foot on the ground once. When he did that, a metal skateboard appeared attached to both of his shoes. Yes, he disconnected his left foot to push off and start skating around. He was a little wobbly, but it worked. He tapped his foot again, making the board disappear. If that works, then so should this. He tapped his foot on the ground twice, making his shoes turn to rollerblades. He skated around on these a little better. Okay, one more test. He made the wheels disappear before tapping his foot 3 times. Blades appeared on the bottom, and he squealed while jumping up and down. Oh my god, knife shoes! He made them disappear before he started messing with them more. Midoriya, what are you? Power Loader rushed in to see Izuku skating around on his rollerblades while freaking out. Oh, you did it. Good job. Izuku smiled wide and nodded. I know, right? This is so cool. He shifted to the skateboard again and detached both feet so that he could hold it before putting it back on his feet. Can I show Aizawa-sensei? Izuku asked excitedly. Power Loader only nodded as Izuku rushed out of the classroom. He ran to the teacher's lounge and burst through the door, scaring everyone except for Aizawa, who already knew who it was. Aizawa-sensei, Aizawa-sensei, look what I made. Aizawa looked down and listened as Izuku explained his shoe attachments excitedly. Sounds good, kid. Nice job. He patted Izuku on the head, who smiled even wider. Thanks da-ade. Have a nice day. I have to go. Izuku then sprinted out of the room, leaving a stunned Aizawa and a laughing Midnight and Present Mike. Izuku made it back to the empty classroom and slammed the door before sinking to the floor. I can't believe I almost did that. Ugh, stupid, stupid. He groaned before standing up and walking around a little. Okay. Doubt he noticed it. He looked at his phone and saw it was the end of the day. I'm sure he'll forget it by tomorrow, right? Right. He grabbed his stuff and raced out of the school, heading towards where the others were. He knew Dabi wouldn't be there since he was supposed to be starting work at the dojo today. He almost called you Dad, Midnight cried out while laughing. Aizawa was still a little shocked, but soon snapped out of it and glared at the papers in his hands. Shut up. Aizawa silently hoped that Izuku wouldn't be angry with him later. Izuku was sitting in the living room with Dabi and Shinsu next to him. At the moment, Shinsu was beating Dabi in a racing game while it rained heavily outside. F you purple rat. Izuku was trying not to laugh as they threw insults at each other. Why don't you try less? Now boys, play nice. Izuku smiled and waved at Inko, who had just walked in. Hi Mom, how was work? Inko set her things down. It was good, Izuku nodded. Izuku, can you come into the kitchen? Izuku and Shinsu's eyes widened. He stood up from the couch and followed after her. Yeah, sure. Shinsu watched them walk into the kitchen while Dabi passed him in the race. What's up with that? Dabi asked, realizing that Shinsu wasn't paying attention. They only go into the kitchen if it's serious. They both looked to the doorway now, though they couldn't hear them. Wonder what happened? Dabi nodded his head as the two stood up and walked to the entrance and stayed silent while they listened. Mom, is everything okay? Izuku asked, his hand on the counter as he tried to get a read on his mom's mood. She didn't seem angry, but it had gotten harder to read his mom over the years. Izuku, are you okay? His eyes widened, though he quickly hid it and laughed a little. Of course, Mom. Why wouldn't I be? She finally turned around, and he saw unshed tears in her eyes. Mom, she sighed and whipped her eyes. Izuku, were you being told to kill yourself at school? Izuku stood there frozen. Please tell me it didn't happen, and not that I wasn't a good enough mom. He snapped out of it and walked towards his mom. Mom, you're not. Tell me, Izuku. He flinched back at the loud voice, hoping she didn't see it, but she did. Oh my God. He looked down at the ground before looking back at her. Mom, it's not. She cut him off again. Izuku, you just flinched at me. Your teacher told me everything that happened. Izuku paused and looked at her. What? You were being bullied every day, being beaten up, told to go jump off a roof, and you never told me. Do you not trust me? Izuku felt his own tears stream down his face. That's not what. Not what happened. Your own teachers were against you. Izuku, I'm supposed to be there for you to stop this from happening. Stop. When he shouted that, it was like everything froze. This is why I didn't tell you. You would blame yourself, W, when it wasn't you. Mom. He took a few breaths. It was me, okay? It was my own fault. I should have told you. I know, but... He stopped talking, though Inko waited for him to continue. I can't do this. He mumbled before turning around and running out of the kitchen. He grabbed his jacket that held his phone, headphones, key, and wallet before running out the front door. Izuku, all three of them yelled as he ran out into the rain. They all stood there shocked before Shinsu turned to Inko. Mom, was it true? She still had tears running down her face as she nodded her head. Dabi looked between them before grabbing his own jacket. You stay here and comfort her, okay? I'll go find him. Shinsu nodded and went to his mom as Dabi walked out and closed the door. He looked both ways before seeing Izuku turn down a different street. Midoriya, he chased after the other, though he wasn't sure if the other teen had even heard him. At some point Dabi lost him and was asking people if they had seen him. A few people had, and he was getting pretty far from the house. Excuse me, he tapped on the person's shoulder. Have you seen? He stopped in his tracks and saw the woman's face. She had white hair with bits of red in it. She was wearing glasses and looked a little confused. Yes. Do you need something? He was frozen for a moment before remembering that he had something he needed to do. Yeah, have you seen someone maybe around my age with green hair running somewhere? Yes, I believe so. I think he went over to the forest. He nodded his head and went that direction before whispering. Thanks, Fayumi. He heard her gasp, but didn't stay long enough for her to say anything else. He finally came to where there was a clearing in the woods and looked around a little before hearing the sounds of someone crying. Midoriya? He walked over to where he heard it and saw Izuku sitting at the base of a tree with his legs pulled up to his chest and his headphones in. Dabi sighed and walked up to the other before leaning over him and blocking the rain that came through the trees. Izuku looked up with foggy eyes and confusion. You'll get all wet, Dabi pointed out. Izuku smiled a little sadly at him. So will you? The two looked at each other before Dabi spoke again. What happened? Izuku looked down and away a little. I'm weak. Dabi was a little shocked but kept listening. I can't even defend myself. I almost listened to all those people. Aizawa said it's okay, but it's not. Idiot. Dabi put his other hand in Izuku's hair. You're one of the strongest and kindest people I know. Midoriya. Izuku glared but didn't meet his eyes. Then how come I never fought back? Or told Mom? Dabi crouched down to his level, and they finally met eyes. Dabi could still see the tears streaming down his face. 'Cause you're too nice. You hoped they would be better. You didn't want to bother your mom with something you did think was important. Izuku looked down again. Hell, you picked up some bleeding stranger in an alleyway. Izuku laughed a little at that and nudged his hand a little. Well, the stranger seems pretty nice. Dabi chuckled and sat down next to Izuku. It was silent for a moment before Izuku leaned over and wrapped his arms around Dabi's neck in a hug. Thank you. Dabi was frozen for a moment before wrapping his arms around Izuku's waist. No problem, Midoriya. Izuku laughed a little and pulled away slightly. You know you can call me Izuku, right? I think we're close enough for that now. Dabi looked to the ground before looking back to Izuku. Then you should probably call me by my actual name. Izuku's eyes widened. My name is Todoroki. My father's the number 2 hero. What? You need to keep training Tauya. I will not allow another failure in this family. Tauya stood up with shaky legs. His arms burned from the blue flames still lit. I want to stop. Endeavor turned around with a snarl and looked down at him. What? Tauya looked up with tears streaming down his face and a glare. I said I want to stop. I don't want to be a hero. Endeavor walked closer to him and snatched his burnt wrist, making Tauya cry out. You will stop when you surpass me, as my greatest creation yet, Tauya growled as Endeavor dragged him away. That's how it always was, Dabi sighed, leaning against the tree as Izuku stared at him. I either surpassed him or he would destroy me. Dabi looked at one of his burnt arms. Guess I did that for him. Izuku placed a hand over Dabi's own as he continued. You can't keep doing this, Inji. He's falling apart and he doesn't want to do this. Tauya stayed huddled close to the door as his mother shouted for Endeavor to leave him alone. He will be the next number 1 hero, Rei. Now get out of my way. No. It was silent for a moment before there was a loud noise and his mother crying out. Mom. Tauya threw the door open and crouched down to his mom, who was cradling an already bruising cheek. I'm okay, Tauya. He didn't believe her, but he didn't have much of a choice as Endeavor grabbed him again and began dragging him away. For a while, it was only Fayumi, Natsuo, and me. But when Endeavor realized I wouldn't listen to him without putting up a fight, he decided to have another kid, my little brother Shouto. Don't you lay your hands on him, Tauya shouted while shielding a shaking and crying Shouto. Step out of the way. Tauya stiffed and glared. Hell no, I'm not letting you touch him, old man. He's only 5, you psycho. Endeavor seemed to growl before grabbing onto Tauya's wrist again. Tauya yelled before lighting his arm on fire, forcing Endeavor to let go with a hiss. I told you no. I tried to fight him off at every turn, but he always got to Shouto at some point. Dabi looked down, feeling tears come to his eyes. Izuku still hadn't said anything, but Dabi knew he was listening. "Mom, what do I do?" Tauya asked Rei one day. She seemed shocked by the question, but turned to him with a smile. "You run, my little phoenix." He looked at her shocked. "You run until you can't stop, and you get us help." She caressed his cheek lovingly. "Be our hero." So I did what she said. I just left one night. Fayumi tried to stop me, but I still left. No explanation other than I was tired of it all. God, I left Shadow there. I left them all and ran like a coward. Dabi held his hands over his eyes and leaned his head back against the tree. Izuku moved and kneeled in front of Dabi, pulling his hands back a little. "No, you didn't, Dabi. She told you to and you listened. She wanted you to find help, and you did." Izuku smiled as Dabi looked at him again. "What do you mean?" "Really, Dabi? My mom has seen abuse cases before. We all have. We already knew something was happening." He leaned back on his legs. "And now that we have a name and know people still live there, we can get them out." Dabi looked shocked before he lunged forward and hugged him. Thank you so much." Izuku hugged him back. "Of course." "Hitoshi, am I a bad mother?" Shinsu's eyes widened and he held onto Inko's arms. No, Mom, you're great." Izuku just. "He doesn't like to bother people with his problems." She laughed a little at that. "And he could always blame any injuries and strange habits on training and stuff, right? So of course you didn't notice because he didn't want you to." She smiled and hugged Shinsu. "Thank you, Hitoshi." She let go and whipped her tears with a little laugh. "And I guess you're right, but I'm signing him up for therapy." Shinsu laughed this time. "Probably a good idea." The two sat on the couch and put on a move as they waited for Dabi and Izuku to get back. After maybe an hour, the front door burst open with a frantic Izuku and a panting Dabi. "Mom, we gotta get custody of Dabi's siblings." "Well, I guess just Shadow since the other two are adults, so we can't really do that. We also should probably get Rei better help since she's in a mental hospital." Inko cut him off. "Izuku, honey, slow down and use your words." Izuku looked like he was trying to think of how to word it correctly, giving Dabi the chance to walk up to them. He had a hand on the back of his neck and sighed. "My real name's Todoroki. Endeavor's abusive. My little brother still lives there. My mom's in a mental hospital after losing it because of the abuse, and I need your help." The two on the couch sat there shocked before Inko seemed to snap out of it. "So when do we start?" They came up with a plan pretty quickly. Talk to the police, get Dabi to talk about it to a social worker and officer, get proof, which Dabi had a lot of, talk to the other siblings, talk to Rei, and finally get them out of Endeavor's custody. The only issue is that it would take a long time since they didn't want Endeavor finding out. "I'll talk to them this weekend and explain the situation and plan. Then we'll bring you in, okay?" Inko asked Dabi, who was just staring in shock at the thought-out plan. Yeah, that works." Izuku held onto one of his arms and smiled at him. "If you're uncomfortable with doing it alone, we can have someone with you." Dabi nodded and put his face in his hands. "Thank you all so much." Shinsu rolled his eyes. "What did you expect? You told the one family who would kill an abuser that the number 2 hero was a bag." Dabi laughed a little at that. "Guess you're right." Inko clapped her hand together and smiled. "Okay, everyone to bed. You all have school and work tomorrow." Izuku and Shinsu left after saying good night. Though Inko stopped Dabi, "If you ever need to talk to me or Izuku or Hitoshi. We'll always listen, okay? You're not alone." Dabi felt like crying after today, and that almost pushed it. He hugged her tight before whispering, "Thank you." Inko patted his back, and when he let go she smirked. "You're welcome. Now go to bed. I know you're walking with them in the morning, then heading to work. So go. Shoo shoo." He smiled and went to the guest room. Izuku woke up in the middle of the night from a nightmare, remembering being cornered in school and beaten to hell and back. He walked downstairs to the kitchen and grabbed a glass of water. He turned around and jumped when he saw the figure in the doorway. You scared me, Toshi. He laughed a little, walking over to his little brother. He was about to make another joke when he saw the tears running down his face. What's wrong? Luckily, he didn't need to lean down much since Shinsu was close to his height. Was all of that happening when you protected me? Izuku smiled a little sadly. Yeah, it's the reason I was covered in bandages all the time. Shinsu glared at the ground before punching Izuku in the stomach, making him double over for a moment. Don't do that again or I'll kick you, okay? Izuku smiled and hugged his brother. Promise. The next morning the three were all running around to get ready while Dabi sat on the couch. He always felt awkward, but since he didn't need to get ready, he just sat around. Okay, boys, have a good day at school and work. I'll be home later tonight, okay? Bye, Mom. Love you. Inko walked out the door, but not before patting Dabi's head. The other two came down in their usual morning outfits. Okay, let's head out. You have work in a few, right? Izuku asked Dabi, who was heading to the door. Yeah, once you get to school, I'll head over there. Izuku nodded as they all headed off. Aizawa wouldn't admit it, but he was nervous. He had made great progress with Izuku, and it all might be set back with letting his mother know what happened in middle school. When Izuku walked in, Aizawa pretended to be asleep like normal. He honestly expected a glare or something, but when he saw the normal smile on Izuku's face, he was a little less worried. Aizawa-sensei? Aizawa peeked one eye open. Thank you for telling my mom what happened. Izuku wasn't facing him really, but Aizawa was glad he seemed okay. Of course, problem child. He stood up and walked over to the teen. Now come on, we have capture weapon training. Izuku beamed and hugged Aizawa before running off to change into his hero uniform, leaving a smiling Aizawa to follow behind him. Try again. Izuku threw his arm out, causing the capture weapon to lash out and wrap around the pole. He yanked down, slightly bending the metal, before spinning around it. He twisted before letting it go and aiming a kick at Aizawa. It was a little too fast for Aizawa to dodge. Good. Izuku smirked, pulling out one of his eskrima rods and sweeping Aizawa's feet out from under him. Aizawa flipped as Izuku switched to his gun and shot around, making Aizawa trip up and fall. Izuku used his capture weapon to wrap his arms to his sides. He dragged Aizawa to him before placing a foot on his chest and aiming the gun slightly off to the side, but making it look like it was aimed near his head. Better, Izuku smiled before letting Aizawa up. I want you to work on your style without your weapons. Don't need you relying on them too much. Oh, are we gonna work on hand-to-hand tomorrow then? Izuku asked excitedly, bouncing on the balls of his feet. Not exactly. Your last trip to the Uste didn't go as planned. Izuku laughed a little, thinking of the lecture he gave to Aizawa, so Nedzu suggested we work with the other class. Says it will help you feel like a normal student. Izuku grimaced a little. He had never even talked to any of the other students. He ran into Mirio-senpai, Tamaki-senpai, and Nejier-senpai a few times, but otherwise never really interacted with the other students. That sounds interesting. Aizawa side-eyed him as they entered the school. Izuku quickly changed back into his uniform before meeting back in the class. Stay here, I'll be back to give you more work. Izuku nodded as Aizawa left the room. He had been suspicious of the teen they saw the first time Izuku came in with a burn. When he came in with a worse burn, the suspicion only grew. Then he started showing up and waiting for Izuku to get out of work. He noticed that the man got there about 15 or so minutes before school was over. He would stay away from the wall and simply stand under a tree messing with a phone. Walking out the front gate and looking around, he spotted the teen under the tree like normal. As quiet as possible, he snuck around and grappled into the tree. He crouched on one of the branches and watched him before finally speaking. Who are you? The teen fell over and looked at Aizawa shocked, trying to get his breathing back to normal. Well, hello to you too, Aizawa glared, using his capture weapon to catch the other and hang him from the tree. What the hell? Who are you? The teen stared at him a little confused before seeming to realize who he was. Wait, you're Aizawa, right? Izuku's teacher? He glared harder at the teen who didn't seem to react that much. My name's Dabi. Why? That's a fake name. Obviously, but it's what everyone calls me. Why am I hanging from a tree? Aizawa let the weapon slack make him fall to the ground. He dropped down and crossed his arms. Are you physically harming my student? Dabi's eyes widened as he stood up, shifting slightly on his feet. Look, I know you won't believe me, and I really don't see why you should, but it was an accident. I don't know why he doesn't hold it against me, or get angry, but he forgives me. I'm really sorry. Aizawa didn't show any signs of emotion as the other spoke. It was silent for a while before Aizawa sighed. Midoriya will be out soon. He left the other and walked back into the school where Izuku had finished packing up and was waiting for him to give the assignments. Izuku was more than nervous. He had of course seen some of the other students, but never actually talked to any of them. He walked towards the bus with Midnight and Aizawa in his costume. He had his mask up, but kept his hood down and his hair tied up. He was messing with his hands a lot and typing away on his screen. Everything all right, Midoriya? You seem nervous. He jumped a little hearing Midnight. Oh, yeah, sorry. Just nervous. I don't really talk to or interact with any of the other students. Aizawa patted his head as they got closer to the bus, already hearing the noise. Don't worry about it, problem child. They're just annoyances. Izuku laughed a little. When Izuku stepped onto the bus, no one except Vlad King seemed to notice. He was glad that he had a habit of somehow blending in and being invisible. He walked to the back of the bus and continued messing with his computer, cataloging and going through the information he had gathered from the other students. Welcome to the unexpected simulation joint. 13 did the same explanation as the last time Izuku was here. He had assumed the other class hadn't trained here yet. He stayed mostly off to the side, and it seemed like the others still didn't notice him. Midoriya, what is my number one rule? 13 asked. Everyone seemed to look around, not knowing who he was. Don't feel afraid to ask for help or ask questions. The class all jumped seeing him near the back. When did you get here? A male with light blue hair, pale skin, and a fish's tail yelled. He's been here since the bus. Pay more attention. Aizawa scolded, glaring at the class. I think we would have noticed him. A girl with white hair, greenish skin, and sharp claws said smugly while rolling her eyes. You didn't. We'll be doing more situational awareness training because of it. Vlad King said with a glare towards the class. Some of the students glared at Izuku, who pretended not to notice it. Okay, we're going to separate you into groups. We'll give you a number, and you'll be partnered with people with the same number and sent with a teacher. 13 explained as Midnight numbered them off. Izuku ended up getting a 3 and walked over to where he saw the others. The 2 from before were also in the group, making him sign internally a little. He could tell they weren't going to like him no matter what. Oh goody, we got parred with the ghost. The girl rolled her eyes and huffed. Lay off Naomi, a girl with black hair, dark skin, and red nails said, slightly shoving the other aside. Nice to meet you, I'm Suzuki. She offered a hand with a large smile. Izuku took the hand and smiled back, though she couldn't see it because of the mask. Midoriya, if you don't mind me asking, what's your quirk? She smiled almost evilly before her hair started moving, the ends turning to snake heads and extending, one slithering around her arm. Snake hair. It's not super strong but useful, you know? Izuku brightened up and started using one hand to type the information into the computer. That's so cool. Do you know how far they stretch? Or how much weight they could lift? Suzuki smiled excitedly. She wore a red bodysuit with black armor covering her vital points, a whip at her side, and a black eye mask. Also, are you a fan of Midnight? Your outfits look similar. I am. She's so cool. And they can stretch for about 30 feet. I can lift your average person with them, but otherwise it starts to hurt. Was your outfit inspired by anyone? Izuku looked at his own and shook his head. No, not really. I wanted an outfit that would let me hide easily, but not scare people. My little brother actually helped me plan it out. She gasped with stars in her eyes. Really? Do you have a picture of him? He pulled out his phone and started showing her pictures of him and the others, explaining who they were and how they all got along. Okay, everyone, I'll be your teacher. Midnight greeted, walking over to them. Izuku nudged Suzuki, who nudged him back. We're going to work over in that building over there. You'll have to get the dummies out of the building before it crashes down. Okay, let's go. The other male looked nervous while the other girl seemed to not care. Izuku was already thinking of plans on the best way to get them out. He didn't notice, but Suzuki was listening closely and adding in her own ideas. It had been going pretty okay so far. The other two didn't waste time and didn't even try to work together. Izuku was a little shocked when Suzuki worked with him. Midnight seemed happy they had been working together. They had also gotten the most people out so far. Would you two stop trying to impress her so much? God, it's annoying. The girl yelled at Izuku and Suzuki when they went back to the ground floor. What are you talking about, Naomi? We've just been doing what we're told. Suzuki defended. She seemed to find out pretty quickly that Izuku didn't like confrontation. As if, you two have been geeking out and annoying this entire time. The guy yelled at the two. Izuku glared and set the dummy down. We shouldn't be arguing. This is a training exercise, but it's still a dangerous area. He could practically feel the ground shifting under him, and he had a bad feeling. Aizawa always told him to trust his instincts. Oh, shut it. Why should we listen to you? The girl yelled, shoving him. Suzuki growled and wrapped one of her snakes around the girl. Don't shove him. The girl slashed at the snake, making it let go. This time the guy shoved Izuku. It was strong enough to get him out of the ground floor and back outside. Guys, Izuku cut himself off, seeing the pillars crack along the sides. He ran back before using his capture weapons and wrapping it around the pillars. He felt them finally snap as he pulled them taut. Get out, he grunted out, feeling the weight pull on his arms and drag him forward a little. The girl seemed to notice and started running to the exit. The guy and Suzuki noticed too late, though, as debris hit them and knocked them to the ground. He shifted his foot and tugged away from the building as hard as he could. He saw that the two still in the building weren't moving. Either they were knocked out or trapped. You, the girl looked at him with anger. I don't care how you feel about me, but they're in danger. Run back in there and get them. Why should I? He cut her off with a growl and a shout. Now, she paused in shock before nodding and running back. Using her claws, she cut through a piece of debris that was trapping Suzuki. She stood up and used her snakes to pick the man up before they all got out of the building. Once he knew they were out, he let his capture weapon come back to him and the building to crash to the ground. Midoriya! He fell to his knees, cradling one of his arms as Suzuki and Midnight ran over. Are you okay? Suzuki asked worriedly. He tried to nod his head, but grunted when he pulled his other arm a little. What happened? Midnight crouched next to him and moved his jacket, getting a look at his arms. Both were now starting to bruise and showed signs of rug burn. Both shoulders had slight bruising, but his right was swelling more and looked worse. Let's get you to recovery, girl. Aizawa seemed to appear out of nowhere and helped Izuku up. Midnight, stay with them and figure out what happened. She nodded, already going over to the other two who looked pissed. Can I come, please? It's partly my fault he's hurt. I want to make sure he's okay. Aizawa stared at her before sighing. Fine, come on. Izuku smiled at Suzuki, who smiled back and started talking more about her quirk to try and distract him from the pain. You dislocated your right shoulder, pulled your left, you have a small fracture on your wrist, and your arms are bruised and burned from the fabric. Recovery Girl explained as she handed Aizawa the chart. I thought the fabric didn't burn. Aizawa stated. He had never had a problem with it before. Normally they don't, but his are on his arms and aren't meant to be used to hold up a building from falling on 3 teenagers. Suzuki ducked a little. I'm really sorry. I would have gotten one of the teachers, but there wasn't time, and if I left, Izuku started mumbling as Aizawa sighed. Problem child. He stopped talking and looked at Aizawa. It's not your fault. You did the right thing. We just don't want you doing it again, understand? He nodded his head. Suzuki elbowed him in the side and smiled. Hey, at least you're a hero. You showed those two, Izuku nodded. I guess. What was their problem with me? He was used to some hate, but it was usually when people knew he was quirkless. They don't like being wrong or having to do extra training. Suzuki just shrugged her shoulders a little. None of the class do really. They all think they're too good for it. You showed them we aren't though. You held up a building. It was crazy. Are you okay, by the way? You got hit with debris, right? She nodded a little and showed a bruised ankle. I already had it looked at though. Just bruised, nothing serious. Izuku sighed in relief. You never told me your quirk, by the way. He flinched a little. That's because I'm quirkless. Suzuki stared at him with wide eyes. You held up a building, he nodded, still looking down in slight fear. You're so cool. How'd you do that? He jumped, a little shocked at the Amazon in her voice. Dabi, what do you mean? You're not disgusted or anything. She looked at him a little confused. Why would I be? You just saved my life. You're literally the coolest. He smiled excitedly and started talking about how he knew it would work. Izuku got out of school and exchanged numbers with Suzuki. He was happy to have a friend at school. It also turned out she wasn't well liked in her class either. Recovery Girl had healed his wounds slightly, though she left the bruises and strain to heal on its own, so he would need to wear a shoulder brace for the week and not overwork himself more than he needed to. Are you okay? Dabi asked as soon as he saw Izuku, grabbing his arms and looking them over for any more obvious damage. Sorta. Recovery Girl healed me as much as she could, but suggested letting the bruises and muscles fully heal on their own so I wasn't too drained. Dabi glared at him a little, but there wasn't any heat behind it. What happened then? You have rug burns on your arms too. Izuku then explained what had happened at the Uschi and how he got hurt. I'll burn those alive. They're lucky you're so nice. Izuku blushed a little and laughed. It wasn't that bad. Besides, I won't be seeing them for a while probably. Aizawa-sensei was really angry at them. Good. If they hadn't been so rude, you wouldn't be hurt. Izuku laughed a little, making Dabi smile as they headed to the middle school. Izuku burst into the living room, holding piles of old computers, metal, and pieces of glass. What you got there? Shinsu asked, looking up from his phone. A smoothie. Shinsu laughed at him as he set everything down on the counter. So I've been doing some research. The technology for this stuff has existed for a while, but no one uses it, which is stupid really, but nevertheless. He pulled out his support items notebook and opened it, pointing to a detailed drawing of a visor, what looked like bones from the hand made out of metal, and a weird-looking watch. All of the information on it was coded so Shinsu couldn't read it. Izuku had told him it was the alphabet shifted 2 to the left, put through binary, and then put through a different code he couldn't remember the name of. He was always surprised that Izuku could read it, but it made sense when he had nearly photographic memory. What is it exactly? Shinsu always liked hearing him talk about different inventions that he made or came up with and how they worked. The sunglass visor thing is pretty much what it looks like, except a few added details. It should be able to see infrared, in the dark, scan someone and tell you their current state. It should also hopefully connect to my mask and those too. He pointed to the other 2 drawings. Sounds like a lot. It is, but I should be able to do it. After all, I made these right. He tapped his heel once, making the skateboard appear. He slid slightly before making it disappear. The staff had agreed he could take those home since he made them. They were approved, and they weren't considered a weapon. True? Can I help? Shinsu asked. It had been a while since him and Izuku worked on something together. Ever since he got into UA, got a job, and met Dabi, they hadn't hung out alone for a while. Of course. Here, I'll show you how to take apart the larger computer. We need its screen, motherboard, the RAM, and any other storage thingies. Izuku handed him a pair of gloves and tools, though Izuku didn't wear any gloves, which explained the small scars he had. How come I have to wear gloves? Shinsu asked with a small frown. Izuku rolled his eyes and nudged him. 'Cause I'm a good older brother. Now let's get to work. They had gone through the computer pretty quickly, getting anything of value and useful out before Izuku started tearing the metal apart. They mostly talked about school and things the other had missed or drama. You should have seen it. Mina can be scary when she wants. Izuku chuckled at the story. I think Denki almost passed out though. He's lucky I caught him or he would have bashed his head open. Izuku smirked as he pried the casing off of a phone. Speaking of the group, you like any of them? Shinsu dropped the tool he was holding and stared at Izuku, who was smiling like an evil cat. You. Stop that. Izuku laughed a little. I have no idea what you're talking about, Toshi. I haven't done anything. Shinsu glared and picked the tool back up. But you will. The moment you even think I like one of them, you're gonna interrogate and threaten them. Izuku gasped. I would do no such thing. I would interrogate and threaten both or all of you. Shinsu rolled his eyes and threw a screw at Izuku, who dodged. Oh right, I have a shift later. Do you want to come with? You can work on schoolwork while I help people. You sure? Won't your boss be angry? Shinsu wasn't opposed to the idea. None of them had actually been to where he worked before. Nah, she's really nice. I'm sure she'd love to meet you. Fine, as long as it doesn't get you in trouble. They had finished the casing for the and outside of the visor and a few other things for the added pieces when it was time for Izuku to go in. Shinsu packed a small bag for his things so he had something to do while Izuku worked. Midoriya, glad you could make it. Mayumi sent a smile to Shinsu. This your little brother, right? I definitely see the resemblance. She joked, pointing to their hair. Very funny, he nudged her as he went to the back and changed into his uniform. He's just coming to work to hang out is all. Nice, sibling bonding is always good. I'll go ahead and head out then. We've been slow today, only a couple of people, so I wouldn't worry too much. She went to the back and changed into her own clothes before leaving the cafe. Shinsu sat at the counter and started finishing the homework he had gotten while Izuku whipped down the tables and helped the few patrons there. Senpai? Izuku turned and saw Gyro and Yaemomo walking in and sitting a chair away from Shinsu at the counter. Hey, how are you guys doing? I haven't seen you in a while. The two girls had been coming in a little more often ever since he helped them with schoolwork, though more recently they hadn't been around. Sorry about that. I've been trying to train more and Yaemomo was helping me. Shinsu perked up at the new people a little and looked between the three. Really? What have you been learning? He set tea in front of Yaemomo, a soda in front of Gyro, and topped Shinsu's coffee off. We don't wish to distract you from customers, senpai. It can wait. Izuku looked confused. There wasn't anyone else in the cafe besides them at the moment. He locked eyes with Shinsu and laughed a little. This is my little brother Shinsu. He's not really a customer. He explained. Both girls looked shocked and looked between the two. You don't really look alike. Gyro pointed out. Shinsu smirked a little. He could tell she was fun. Adopted, actually. He stared at Gyro for a minute. You like MCR, don't you? She crossed her arms. Maybe. What's it to you, purple? Oh, ouch. I'm so offended. Other teen with purple hair. Yaemomo looked confused before she spoke up. It's a pleasure to meet you, Shinsu. She turned back to Izuku. We mostly train at our homes, but have been looking for somewhere to learn more. You could train where we go. Shinsu shrugged his shoulders a little. They're affordable and teach a lot. Izuku's been going there for a while, and after I moved in I started going there with some friends. Really? What's it called? Gyro asked, about to search the place up. Izuku walked over to the patron that had walked in and got their order. I'll bring that right out. He went to the kitchen area and made the coffee and brought out a cinnamon roll. giving it to the customer before going back to the group at the front. You go to UA? Yaemomo asked, a little shocked. Yep, Class 1A. Dude, that's so hard to get into. Nice job, Gyro complimented. Thanks. Are you guys shooting for UA then? Yes, I'm recommended actually, and Kyoko wishes to go through the normal process, Izuku smiled. Well, I don't know much about the recommended, but I'm sure you'll do amazing either way. And if you want to train at our place, our friends' moms own the place, and what is Dabi exactly? Shinsu asked, looking at Izuku. Well, he lives with us, and I'm pretty sure Mom adopted him, but I don't really see him as a brother. So, like your boyfriend? Gyro asked with a smirk. Izuku blushed and whipped around to her. What? Shinsu started laughing and almost fell over if Yaemomo hadn't caught him. He isn't my boyfriend, Gyro. You sure? 'Cause we've heard you talk about him. A lot. She's got a point, Izuku. Is there something you're not telling me? Izuku glared at both of the purple-haired teens while Yaemomo giggled. Both of you stop that. I will poison your drinks. That didn't stop the group from laughing as Izuku rolled his eyes. It was getting later into the night, meaning only Izuku and Shinsu were left in the cafe. Shinsu scribbled something on his notebook while Izuku finished cleaning the area. When the door opened, though, Shinsu looked up with wide eyes, seeing Aizawa standing there. Oh, hi Aizawa-sensei. Usual, right? The teacher nodded as Izuku began preparing his order. Shinsu whispered, though it was loud enough to get Aizawa's attention. He looked at the other for a moment before speaking. Shinsu Hitoshi, right? Shinsu nodded, still a little shocked that the hero was there. How are the Midoriyas treating you? Aizawa knew that the other wasn't in danger, but he had also learned that Shinsu was a huge fan of his. Yeah, Izuku and Mom are great. Aizawa nodded. You also plan on becoming an underground hero? Shinsu nodded again. If you're not working for it, give up. Shinsu glared a little. Of course I'm working for it. He growled a little, though Aizawa only smirked. Good, you have some potential then. Izuku handed him the coffee and a small bag. Have a good patrol, Aizawa-sensei. The teacher left the two. Shinsu looked to Izuku confused. He told me if I wasn't working to be an underground hero then to give up. Then said I had some potential when I did work for it. Izuku chuckled and nodded his head. That's a compliment, Toshi. It means he thinks you can do it. Izuku explained. He had been hanging around Aizawa enough to know when he was complimenting someone, giving advice, or telling them something was wrong. That was a compliment? Shinsu asked with a small laugh. Yeah, he's like that. We should head home though. Don't want to be out too late. When they did finally get home, Inko had already gone to bed, sending them good-night texts. Hey, you losers finally got back. Dabi greeted them from the kitchen, drinking tea at the counter. Shut up. Shinsu threw one of his socks at Dabi, who dodged before throwing a slipper back. I'm gonna head to bed. Your schedule is tiring. Izuku nodded and watched the other leave before getting a glass of water. Shouldn't you be going to bed? Dabi asked. He could see the eye bags under Izuku's eyes more prominently now. Probably in a minute, not really tired. He shrugged a little, leaning against the counter. I seriously don't get how. The kid just followed you around, and he looks worn out. He didn't even do any of your school, work, or training. Izuku huffed a little. Yeah, he set the cup down and smiled at Dabi. How was work, by the way? Pretty normal, Izuku laughed, knowing who he was talking about. But he's not terrible. The others are getting good, but Lightning McQueen could use a little more work, especially with his quirk. He nodded. Hopefully they would be able to help him so he could be a good hero. Maybe I should see if I can help. I think I've analyzed his quirk before. He tried to think of what notebook it might have been in. Here, let's move to the living room at least. Dabi nudged him towards the exit before Izuku went on his own. They sat on the couch and turned the TV on for background noise as Izuku mumbled quietly about what he could remember. Dabi listened silently as he talked. He could understand most of what he was saying at least. "Oh, sorry, didn't mean to do that." He held a hand over his mouth before Dabi moved it. "Don't stop, I was listening." He looked at Izuku's arms and saw the bruising had gone down, but they were still slightly red. "Still can't believe you literally stopped a building from falling on 3 kids." Izuku laughed a little. "Yeah, it was terrifying, honestly." Dabi looked to him a little confused. "If it hadn't worked, they could have gotten really hurt. Or even died. I knew what I was preparing for when I got old enough to understand what being a hero meant. But it was still scary, you know." "Not really. I've only had to protect my siblings and mom, but I kinda do." Izuku smiled and hugged the other. "Thank you for listening to me." Dabi wrapped his arms around the other's waist. "Course, gotta repay you somehow." Izuku pushed away a little but kept his hands on his shoulders. "Dabi, you really don't." Dabi rolled his eyes with a smirk. "I will anyway." Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey through What If Deku Was Class 1A's Senior. I hope you found it as intriguing and thought-provoking as we did. A big shout out to Jace_is_dead for crafting such a compelling story. Don't forget to check out their profile on Archive of Our Own for more amazing works. The link is in the description below. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe to What If Deku 2.0 for more fascinating explorations into the world of fanfiction and fantasy. Your support helps us create more content like this, and we're always excited to hear your thoughts and suggestions in the comments section. See you guys in the next video.